The crash came without warning. One moment, Jaren's small cargo ship was sailing through peaceful space, and the next, alarms blared as a cosmic storm hit. His ship shook violently. Sparks flew from the control panel, and the engines failed. With no choice, he guided the burning ship toward the nearest moon. Gray, cracked, and lonely. He braced for impact. The crash landing was rough. His ship skidded across the rocky surface and slammed into a hill, finally stopping with a painful jerk. Jaren's head throbbed, but he was alive. He climbed out of the smoking wreckage, coughing from the heat and dust. The landscape stretched out, cold and silent, under a purple sky. His comms were broken. No signal. No help. "Great," he muttered. "Stranded." As Jaren grabbed his pack and a small scanner, something strange blinked on his screen. A weak energy signal, very close. Curious and cautious, he followed it. After walking for half an hour through scattered rocks and jagged cliffs, he found it. A crashed ship, much larger than his own, lay half-buried in a crater. It wasn't human. It was a Royal Zilari vessel. Jaren's breath caught. The Zilari were known across the galaxy. Tall, elegant, and powerful. He had never seen one up close. Carefully, he stepped into the broken hull. Sparks still flickered. The inside was torn apart by fire and impact. Then he heard a soft sound. A cough. He turned sharply and aimed his small flashlight. Behind a fallen beam, someone was trapped. It was her. She was lying on the ground, half-conscious, with silver-blue skin and long white hair. Her dress was torn, her arm bleeding. She was clearly in pain, but her eyes, sharp and glowing, locked onto Jaren with strength. "Don't come closer," she said weakly, her voice full of warning. Jaren raised both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just crashed too. Saw your ship. I can help." She tried to push herself up, but winced and fell back. "Who are you?" she asked. "Name's Jaren. Cargo pilot. Human." He stepped closer. "And you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Princess Valessa of House Irian." Jaren's eyes widened. A real princess. He had no idea what to say. But her condition was worse by the second. "Look," he said gently. "You're injured. Let me help you get out of here. We'll talk after." Valessa didn't answer. Her body was shaking slightly from pain, and her eyes were losing focus. Jaren didn't wait. He pulled a beam aside and carefully lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, and she didn't resist. He carried her back toward his crashed ship. Along the way, she spoke faintly. "If my kind finds me, you'll be in danger too." Jaren looked down at her. "Then let's make sure they don't find either of us." Back at his ship, he laid her down in the least damaged room and patched her wounds with his emergency kit. Valessa stayed quiet, watching him with guarded eyes. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. Jaren paused. "Because you needed help. That's simple." He gave a small smile. "Sometimes it is." She looked away, unsure whether to believe him. Hours passed. The moon turned colder as the stars shifted above. Jaren fixed what he could, mostly sealing off damaged walls. Valessa rested, recovering slowly. Her breathing evened out. Later, as Jaren checked the scanners again, she spoke. "I was betrayed," she said quietly. "By my own blood. They shot down my ship." Jaren looked at her. "Why?" "Because I refused to support a war. I wanted peace with others, even with humans. They said I was weak." He sat beside her, listening. "They'll come looking, not to rescue me, to finish the job." Jaren's jaw tightened. "Then we better make sure we're not found." She turned her head and studied him for a long moment. "You're strange, human," she said finally. "Not like the others I've met." "Is that a compliment?" She didn't answer, but her lips curved slightly. Outside, winds began to blow across the rocky ground. The stars above shined cold and clear. Two strangers, one a fallen royal, the other a stranded pilot, shared a fragile silence. But something had already changed. For the first time in her life, Valessa had no title, no guards, no court. Only a human who saw her not as a princess, but as someone worth saving. And deep inside, she felt it. This man was going to matter more than she had ever expected. The moon's silence was peaceful, but it didn't last long. Jaren sat inside the half-broken cockpit of his ship, working on the scanner. Sparks occasionally popped from the old wires, but he was used to it. He had lived most of his life fixing things that were falling apart. That's what cargo pilots did. Behind him, Princess Valessa rested in the corner, still wrapped in a heat blanket. Her wounds were healing slowly. She hadn't spoken much since her reveal. Jaren stole a glance at her. Despite the dirt and cuts, she looked regal. Silver-blue skin glowing softly under the emergency lights, white hair flowing down her shoulder, and eyes full of a calm sadness. He finally asked, "You sure you're okay?" Valessa nodded, but didn't look up. "Physically, I'll survive. But everything else, I don't know." Jaren leaned back. "You want to talk about it?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, in a soft voice, she began. "I was on my way to the High Conclave," she said. "I was going to speak against the war. Our empire wants to attack the human border colonies. But I saw things. The truth. You people aren't monsters like they said." Jaren blinked, surprised. "Not all of us know. My father was against me speaking, but he still protected me. He sent me with a trusted team. Or so I thought." Valessa's hands clenched. "They turned on me mid-flight, disabled the ship, left me with no guards. They thought the crash would finish me." Jaren frowned. "But you survived." She looked at him now, her voice sharper. "Yes, and they'll come back to make sure I didn't." He sighed. "So, you're hunted." "Yes, and I'm standing between you and your assassins." Jaren gave a dry laugh. "Well, that's new. You can leave," she said softly. "It's not your fight." Jaren shook his head. "Too late. I'm already in it." Later that night, the scanner picked up a signal. A ship, small, fast, entering the moon's orbit. Valessa stood quickly. "That's not one of yours, is it?" "No," Jaren said, checking the code. "Zillari markings. They're scanning the surface." Her face darkened. "They found the crash site." Jaren's heart sped up. He looked around. His ship wouldn't fly. Not yet. They had no weapons, no shields, and nowhere to run. "We need to move," he said. He packed quickly, grabbing energy packs, a light source, and a handheld scanner. Valessa stood beside him, already wrapping her blanket into a cloak. She didn't move like a weak girl anymore. She moved like someone ready to survive. They left the wreck and headed toward the mountains. Jaren had seen ruins on his map earlier, possibly an old mining station or ancient shelter. It was their best shot. As they climbed over rocks and uneven ground, Valessa kept glancing back. "They'll follow our heat trail. Then we hide better than they search," Jaren replied. By nightfall, they'd reached a cliffside. Hidden beneath it was a narrow cave. Inside, the air was dry and still. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. "Looks old," Jaren whispered. "Very old." Valessa touched the wall gently. This is not Zillari. It's older, pre-Empire." They went deeper, finding chambers carved in smooth stone, long forgotten by time. Jaren set up a small fire unit. The soft heat filled the space as they sat, catching their breath. Valessa looked around. "You find shelter like this often." He smiled. "When you crash as much as I do, yeah." She gave a small laugh. It was quiet and short, but real. As they ate protein bars and sipped from the water supply, Jaren noticed Valessa staring into the fire. "You know," she said, "when I first saw you, I expected nothing. Thanks, he said with a smirk. I mean, I thought you'd leave me there. Or worse. My people always warned about humans. But you didn't run. You didn't ask for anything. You just helped. That's kind of the point of helping, he replied. Valessa leaned back against the stone. Strange. My own kind tried to end me. A stranger saved me. Jaren stayed silent. I'm starting to wonder who the monsters really are, she said quietly. Far above the cave, the enemy ship flew slowly across the dark sky, scanning, searching. But inside the ancient shelter, two unlikely allies sat side by side. Tired, hunted, but not defeated. Valessa looked at Jaren one last time before resting. I owe you my life, human, she whispered. And I never forget a debt. Jaren simply nodded. He didn't know it yet, but that promise would change both their futures. The cave was quiet, but the danger outside was growing. Jaren didn't sleep much that night. He kept listening. Every sound, every shift of wind. His scanner had picked up strange signals just before the sun dipped below the rocky horizon. The enemy ship was getting closer. Valessa was asleep, her back resting against the wall. The glow from the firelight danced on her calm face. She looked peaceful, but Jaren knew it was only temporary. When morning came, he gently woke her. We need to move. They're getting close. She nodded without question. Her body still ached, but her mind was sharp. The warmth of the cave had helped, but it couldn't protect them forever. They walked carefully through a narrow passage that opened into an old underground tunnel. It was dark and cold, carved from ancient stone. Strange markings lined the walls, symbols neither of them could fully read. This is not just a cave, Valessa said. It's a forgotten part of the old world. Before my people ruled. Think it's safe? Jaren asked, shining his flashlight ahead. She glanced around. Maybe, but old places hold old secrets. Still, they had no other choice. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, the air grew cooler and the silence became heavier. Their footsteps echoed. They found a wide chamber with broken statues and cracked machines. Moss and dust covered everything. Jaren stopped near a broken console. This looks like tech. Very old tech. Valessa moved beside him. Her eyes lit up with recognition. These are memory cores, crystal-based. If they still work, they may hold history. Can we use them? She reached into her bag and pulled out a small reader device. Maybe. Let's see. Minutes later, the old crystal hummed faintly. A glowing image appeared, blurry at first, then clear. A voice began to speak in an old alien language, but Valessa translated as it played. They speak of ancient wars, times before the Empire. This planet, this moon, was once a place of peace, a meeting point for many species. She paused. There were betrayals here too, great ones. Jaren glanced at her, history repeating itself. She gave a sad smile. Maybe. Suddenly, the scanner in Jaren's hand peeped. Motion. Close. He looked up quickly. They're here. Valessa's eyes sharpened. How many? 2. No, 3 life forms, coming down the cliffs above us. They didn't have time to escape. Jaren shut off the scanner. We hide. They moved fast, finding a side tunnel with a broken doorway. Inside was a narrow space, just big enough for them to sit. Seconds later, footsteps echoed in the distance. Harsh voices in Zilari tongue barked orders. A red light passed across the walls as a drone floated by. Jaren held his breath. Valessa sat beside him, quiet but tense. She whispered, the one leading them. I recognize his voice. Who is it? Jaren asked softly. My cousin, General Arvak. He wanted the throne. Jaren looked surprised. Your own cousin sent assassins after you. She nodded slowly. He hated my father's softness. He always wanted control. And now he thinks I'm the last obstacle. They heard the voices move away, deeper into the tunnels. "We need to move again," Jaren whispered, before they circle back. They crept through the dark tunnels, using side paths and vents. Valessa moved like someone who had trained for survival, even if her body was tired. Her instincts were sharp. Eventually, they reached a broken hatch that led into a lower chamber. Here, strange lights still glowed on the walls. Ancient power hummed faintly. Valessa stopped. "I've seen this in old texts. This is a sanctuary, built by those who wanted peace." Jaren stared at the room. It didn't feel like a place of war. It felt calm, warm, safe. For now. As they rested, Jaren fixed a cracked panel on his scanner while Valessa leaned against the wall. "You've seen a lot," he said quietly. "So have you." He looked at her. "You think they'll give up?" "No," she said, "not until I'm gone." "Then what do we do?" She met his eyes. "We fight smart. We survive, and when the time is right, I go back. I show them I'm not so easy to erase." He nodded. "You're not alone anymore," he said. She blinked at him. "You really believe in helping someone who's not even from your world?" Jaren smiled. "I don't care where you're from. You needed help. That's all that matters." For the first time, she reached out and gently touched his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're more than I expected." He squeezed her fingers back. "So are you." Outside the sanctuary, the enemy regrouped. They didn't know it yet, but the hunted princess was no longer running alone. She had found someone who would not betray her. And soon, they would both fight back. The ancient sanctuary felt calm, but the storm was not far behind. Jaren sat near a glowing panel, checking the scanner. The enemy signals had moved deeper into the tunnels. For now, they were safe, but it wouldn't last long. Valessa stood quietly near a wall covered in old symbols. The soft light from the walls made her silver-blue skin glow faintly. She ran her fingers across the carvings, lost in thought. Jaren looked up. "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "These walls tell stories. From before my empire began." He walked over. "What kind of stories?" "Stories about truth, about peace, about people who tried to stop wars before they started." She pointed to one carving. "This symbol, it's the old mark of unity. My ancestors destroyed these teachings. They erased history that didn't match their power." Jaren stared at the wall. "So your people built an empire on lies." Valessa nodded slowly. "Yes, and I was raised to be proud of it. But I see it now. All of it." In the center of the sanctuary stood a sealed pedestal. It pulsed with blue light. Valessa stepped toward it. "This may be what they're really after. Not just me, but this place. These truths." Jaren knelt beside the pedestal. "Can we open it?" She pulled out her device. "With time." As she worked, Jaren glanced around. The sanctuary felt different now. He didn't feel like a visitor. He felt connected. "Valessa," he said, "if you show this truth to your people, will they listen?" She paused. "Some will. Many won't. But I have to try." Hours passed as they waited and worked. Jaren fixed his scanner, added power cells, and reinforced the door using old metal pieces. Valessa stayed focused on unlocking the pedestal. They spoke little, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. Then the pedestal clicked. A soft light rose from it, thin lines of data floating in the air. Ancient text, images, maps, all glowing in front of them. Valessa stared in awe. This is it. Evidence, records, a complete history of the original peace treaties, names of leaders who were erased, cultures forgotten. Jaren smiled. "So you can prove your side of the story now." She nodded. "If I can get back to the High Conclave, this could change everything." "But Arvak won't let that happen," Jaren said. "No," she agreed. "He'll try to destroy this. And me." Suddenly, the scanner beeped again. Movement. Close. Jaren's face grew serious. They're near, just above us. Valessa grabbed the data crystal from the pedestal. Then we leave now. They moved quickly, heading to a back exit. The sanctuary connected to a narrow tunnel that led toward the surface. Rocks and dust fell as they climbed. Halfway through, Jaren stopped. Wait. He knelt and placed a motion trigger on the tunnel floor. If they follow too close, it'll slow them down. Valessa raised an eyebrow. You plan for everything. He grinned. I crash a lot. Learn to stay ready. She laughed softly. You're very strange. For a human. At last, they reached a hidden exit under a fallen cliff. Outside, the sky was dark again. The stars blinked gently above the rocky plains. Valessa took a deep breath. I never thought I'd see the sky again. Jaren handed her a small food pack. Let's keep moving before they do. As they walked under the stars, Valessa turned to him. You're not just helping me survive, she said. You're helping me see clearly. What do you mean? My whole life was about duty, control, and power. I thought I was free, but I was trapped in lies. You didn't expect anything from me. You just helped, without fear, without asking why. Jaren looked at her. Maybe that's what freedom really is. They walked for hours, heading toward an old satellite dish they saw on the scanner. It might still be able to send a message to someone who could help. But more than just distance had passed between them. Trust had grown. Valessa walked closer to Jaren now. Her steps were softer, her eyes warmer. Jaren, she said suddenly. Yeah. If I don't make it to the conclave, will you promise to share the truth? He stopped. You're going to make it. But yes, I promise. She nodded. Then, no matter what happens, this was worth it. Back in the tunnels, Arvak's team entered the sanctuary. They saw the open pedestal, the missing data crystal. Arvak clenched his jaw. She has it. One of his soldiers asked, should we destroy what's left? No, Arvak said. It's too late. We chase. We end this. But what he didn't know was that Princess Valessa was no longer running from him. She was running towards something greater. The wind howled across the open plains as Jaren and Valessa climbed the final hill. Below them stood the old satellite station, a tall, rusted tower leaning slightly to one side, surrounded by broken panels and cracked concrete. Jaren scanned the area. Looks empty. No movement. That's good. Valessa clutched the data crystal tightly. We just need it to work long enough to send the files. After that, we disappear. They moved quickly, using the shadows of the rocks to stay hidden. As they reached the building, Jaren pushed the heavy door open. It creaked loudly. Inside, dust floated in the air. Dead consoles lined the walls, wires hung from the ceiling, and a broken chair lay in the corner. Do you think it'll still work? Valessa asked, her voice uncertain. Jaren dropped his pack and began digging through tools. We'll find out. For the next 2 hours, Jaren worked on the communication panel while Valessa kept watch. She stood by the window, eyes on the horizon. The sky above was changing. A faint red light flickered in the distance, too controlled to be natural. They're coming, she said. Jaren didn't stop. I just need 10 more minutes. Valessa turned back to him. Her voice was calm, but her heart was racing. You don't owe me anything, Jaren. If you run now, they won't catch you. He glanced at her. I'm not leaving. Not without you. Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her, not even those sworn to protect her. Finally, Jaren flipped the last switch. The console lit up with a low hum. A small green light blinked. It's alive, he said. Valessa stepped forward and connected the data crystal. The files began to transfer. She added her voice message to the signal. This is Princess Valessa of House Irian. I am alive. The data I send now proves the lies and crimes within our empire. The truth must be known. She pressed the send button. The message shot into space, reaching out to allies and neutral stations across the galaxy. "It's done," she whispered. But outside, things were just beginning. Jaren's scanner beeped sharply. He looked at it and swore under his breath. "They've surrounded the hill. They're fast." Valessa turned to him. "How many?" "Too many to fight." She nodded. "Then we don't fight. We fly." Jaren raised an eyebrow. "Fly what? My ship is still half broken." Valessa pointed behind the building. "There. That's a Sci-Fi." Jaren ran to the back window and looked out. A small, sleek escape craft rested in the wreckage behind the station. It was an old Zilari fighter, designed for speed more than power. "If it worked, they might have a chance. Might be our only shot," he said. They rushed to the craft, pushing aside rusted panels and broken wires. Jaren jumped into the pilot's seat and began checking systems. Fuel's low, shields are weak, but it might fly. Valessa climbed in beside him. "Then let's go." Just as the engines roared to life, blaster fire hit the ground nearby. Soldiers in dark armor appeared from the rocks, weapons raised. Jaren shouted, "Hold on." The Skyfire lifted off the ground, shaking as it rose. Bullets and lasers hit the sides, but the ship pushed through, engines burning. They shot into the sky, fast and fierce, leaving the ground far below. Inside the ship, alarms beeped. The right wing was damaged, and the heat shield flickered. Jaren kept his hands tight on the controls. Come on. Valessa looked back at the planet shrinking below them. "Do you think the message got through?" "If it didn't," he said, "we'll send it again and again, until someone listens." She turned to him. "You've risked everything for me." He glanced at her, then smiled. "You'd do the same." She didn't answer, but her eyes softened. Her heart did too. The ship finally broke through the moon's atmosphere and into open space. Behind them, the enemy ships gave chase, but the Skyfire was faster, barely. Jaren pushed the engine. "We're heading for the neutral zone. They won't follow us there." Valessa placed a hand on his arm. "Thank you, Jaren." He looked at her. "For what?" "For not giving up. Not once. Even when it was dangerous." He gave her a small smile. "You're welcome, Princess." "No," she said gently. "Not Princess. Just Valessa." As the stars stretched around them, and the enemy ships disappeared behind, Valessa sat quietly beside him. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel hunted. She felt free. And she wasn't alone. The Skyfire flew through the vastness of space, its engines humming softly as Jaren kept the ship steady. The view outside was breathtaking. Endless stars, a mix of distant galaxies, and floating nebula. Valessa watched the stars as they passed, her mind far away, lost in thought. Jaren glanced at her. She seemed distant, like her mind was caught between two worlds, the one she had fled and the one she was trying to build. "How long until we reach the neutral zone?" she asked, breaking the silence. Jaren checked the controls. "About 2 days, if we keep this pace." She nodded but didn't respond, her gaze still locked on the starry expanse. The first day passed without incident. They encountered no enemy ships, and Jaren used the quiet time to make repairs on the ship. It was a constant struggle, but he was used to fixing things that weren't meant to be fixed. Valessa kept to herself, occasionally helping where she could, but mostly lost in her thoughts. As the second day began, Jaren noticed that Valessa seemed more restless than usual. She was pacing the small cabin, her steps quick and purposeful. "You okay?" he asked. She stopped and looked at him. "I'm fine. Just thinking." Jaren raised an eyebrow. "About what?" She hesitated, then sat down beside him. "About everything. My people, my family, the empire I was born into." Jaren nodded. "I can't imagine how hard it must be." Valessa smiled sadly. "You're right. You can't. You never lived in a palace, surrounded by lies. You didn't have to smile when you wanted to scream, to bow when you wanted to fight. Jaren looked at her, his expression softening. But you fought anyway. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. Yes, I've always fought, but not in the way I thought I would. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Finally, Valessa stood up and walked to the small viewport. I want to do more than survive, Jaren. I want to rebuild. To undo what my family and my people have done. But I don't know how. Jaren stood and joined her at the window, looking out at the endless space. You'll figure it out. You don't have to do it alone. She turned to him, surprise flickering in her eyes. You'd help me, even after everything. He nodded. I'm already helping you. And I will keep helping you. It's not about your title or who your family is. It's about what you stand for. Her lips parted, as though she wanted to say something, but she stopped herself. Instead, she placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but strong. Thank you, she whispered. The rest of the day passed quickly. They were nearing the neutral zone. Jaren had worked out a plan to send a message to the High Conclave, but Valessa seemed uneasy. She spent most of the time sitting by the window, looking out at the stars, her mind clearly wrestling with the idea of returning home. The following morning, as they entered the neutral zone, Valessa finally spoke. I don't know what they'll say when I show them this, she said, holding the data crystal. I don't know if they'll even listen. Jaren smiled at her. If they don't, then we'll make them listen. Valessa looked at him, her expression softer now, almost grateful. You've got more faith in them than I do. That's because you've been fighting this alone, he said, but you don't have to anymore. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she looked at him not as the princess of a fallen empire, but as a woman, someone who had been through hell and back but wasn't giving up. I can't promise that everything will change overnight, she said, but I can promise to fight for it. For all of it. That's all anyone can do, Jaren replied. Fight for what matters. The neutral zone was quiet, far enough from the Empire and the warships, close enough to other systems that communication was possible. Valessa stood by the communication panel, preparing to send her message to the Conclave. Jaren sat at the controls, watching her as she worked. He had seen many people desperate for help in his life, but none like Valessa. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for change, for the chance to undo the damage her own family had caused. You ready? He asked, his voice calm. Valessa nodded, her fingers hovering over the panel. I have to be. She pressed the button, and the message began to send. The holographic projection appeared in front of them, showing Valessa's calm, determined face. This is Princess Valessa of Hauserian. I am alive. The evidence I send with this message will expose the lies of the Empire and the crimes committed by those who try to silence me. She paused for a moment, her gaze meeting Jaren's. The truth cannot be erased. The galaxy deserves to know. I will not let my people destroy the peace we could have had. As the transmission finished, Valessa leaned back in the chair, her hands trembling slightly. Jaren placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did it. She looked at him, her expression both relieved and worried. Now we wait. For the first time since he'd met her, Jaren saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The war was far from over, but she had taken the first step towards something better. And maybe, just maybe, they could build that future together. The days passed in the neutral zone. Valessa sat in the quiet cabin of the Sci-Fi, her eyes always drifting to the stars outside. The message had been sent, and now they were waiting. Jaren kept the ship running, working on repairs and keeping watch over the surroundings. The silence was strange after everything they had been through, but it was also comforting. They were far from the battles and betrayals that had marked Valessa's life, but they still had a long road ahead. On the 5th day, the message came. A small signal blinked on the communication panel, weak but clear. Jaren rushed to it, his fingers quickly working the controls. "It's from the High Conclave," he said, his voice low. "They're responding." Valessa's heart skipped a beat. She stood up, her breath catching in her throat. "They actually responded." Jaren nodded. "It's not much, but they're asking for confirmation of the data. They want you to come to the conclave for a meeting." Valessa's hands shook as she reached for the panel. "They want me to come back. After everything that's happened. They want the truth," Jaren said, "and they want you to present it." She stared at the blinking message, her thoughts racing. The conclave could help her rebuild, help her expose the lies of her empire, but it also meant facing the very people who had betrayed her. Her father, her cousin, the leaders of the Zilari Empire. "What happens now?" Valessa asked, her voice quieter than before. "We go," Jaren said firmly. "We show them what they try to erase. We don't back down." Valessa looked at him, the weight of her decision settling in. "And you'll come with me." Jaren didn't hesitate. "You're not doing this alone. Not anymore." The Skyfire flew once more through the vastness of space. This time, it wasn't just about running. It was about facing the truth and taking a stand. Valessa stared out the viewport, watching the stars blur by. Each one held 1,000 stories, 1,000 lives, but none of them felt as heavy as the one she was about to walk into. Jaren kept the ship steady, the neutral zone slowly fading behind them. The conclave station was still a day away, but time seemed to move faster now. Each second was filled with the anticipation of what lay ahead. "Are you scared?" Jaren asked quietly, glancing at her. She looked at him, surprised by the question. "I should be, shouldn't I?" "I think you have every right to be," he said. "But you're not. Not really." Valessa smiled faintly. "I guess I'm more worried about what happens after, about what my people will think of me." "You'll show them who you are," Jaren said. "The truth will speak for itself." Her eyes softened, and she nodded. "You've been more help to me than anyone ever could have been." Jaren shrugged. "I'm just doing what's right." The day of the meeting came. The Skyfire docked at the conclave station, a massive structure hanging in the void like a city of metal and light. Valessa felt a lump form in her throat as she gazed at the building. She had never imagined she'd return here, especially not like this. Not as a runaway princess, but as someone who had something to prove. "We'll take it one step at a time," Jaren said, as he noticed her hesitation. She nodded, gathering her strength. She couldn't back out now, not after everything. Inside the conclave chamber, Valessa stood before the council. The room was large, filled with alien representatives from different races, all watching her with expressions that were hard to read. Her father's image appeared on a holoscreen, his eyes cold and distant. "I never thought I'd see you again," her father's voice said, though it was filtered through the screen. "You've been gone for too long." Valessa stood tall. "I haven't been gone, Father. I've been finding the truth you tried to bury." The council murmured, but Valessa didn't flinch. She stepped forward, holding the data crystal high. "This crystal contains the evidence of the lies, the betrayals, and the crimes that my family and your empire have committed. I am here to show you the truth, and to give you the chance to do what's right." Her father's face tightened. "You are a traitor to your own blood." "I'm not a traitor," Valessa replied. "I am a voice for those who have been silenced. And I will fight for them." Jaren stood beside her, offering silent support. Valessa's words were strong, clear. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everything she had lost, and everything she hoped to rebuild. The council took time to review the data, but the response came quickly. One by one, they began to speak, and slowly they began to listen. Some were outraged, others were silent, but all were moved by the undeniable truth Valessa had brought them. Finally, a senior council member stood and addressed her. You have proven your claims, Princess Valessa, and for that, we will grant you the chance to rebuild. But it will not be easy. You must face the consequences of your actions and of those you've exposed. Valessa nodded, knowing that this was just the beginning. I am ready, she said. The council debated, but in the end, the decision was made. Valessa would not only be reinstated as a leader but would also have a voice in shaping the future of the empire, a future of peace, unity, and rebuilding. As the council meeting concluded, Valessa turned to Jaren. I never thought I'd be standing here again. But I'm not just standing here for me. I'm standing here for the future. Jaren smiled. I knew you could do it. Valessa's eyes met his. We did it, Jaren. Together.